Welcome back everyone. This is the part 2 of the OpenVAS GVM series. In the previous video, we went through the brief history of OpenVAS, how it came to be from the open source version of Nessus to now GVM. We also discussed very brief overview and how you can install GVM on your Kali Linux using the apt package manager. We also learned how you can start your GVM and also how you can update the feeds, which are the Greenbone community feeds that are actually responsible for identification of vulnerabilities. If you haven't seen the part 1 of this series, I would highly recommend that you do that by clicking on the link on the top of your screen. Since now we have everything set and in place, let's go ahead and look into how we can actually use GVM to perform scanning on our assets. The quickest way to do that is simply to go to Tasks and then click on this task wizard. It looks like an icon with a magical wand. So I'm going to just click on the task wizard, and here I'll provide my IP address, and it will automatically create a target for me, then create a task for that target, and then start scanning that task right away. So instead of doing a bunch of other stuff, if you want to quickly start your scanning process, what you can do is you can just go to this task wizard and provide your IP address here, and OpenVAS will quickly perform all the tasks and start scanning right away. So let me put my IP address, which I have hosted locally and is vulnerable. So I'm going to type my IP address and click on Start Scan. Of course, this is an immediate scan, which is running with default configurations. And you can see here, it also says the same immediate scan of the IP. It's in requested state. From there, it will go on queuing and then finally in running state. I will fast forward it till it starts running, and you can see it's running and it's at 0% right now. Now, while it's running, we can actually see what exactly are the configurations that OpenVAS used in order to perform this immediate scan. So in order to do that, I will simply click on our scan task, and it will open a drop down. So you can toggle it like this. And here it says that this is my target. And then these are the scanner details. So you could see that my scanner name is OpenVAS default. It's a type of OpenVAS scanner. So in OpenVAS, you can use either the OpenVAS scanner or a CVE scanner. Then the scan configuration is full and fast. If we click these links, we'll see further details. But before we do that, let's go through the configuration here. As you can see, we did not specify any specific network source interface. Our maximum concurrently executed NVTs per host are 4, which means for every host there would be 4 NVTs running. And then maximum concurrently scanned hosts are 20. Now we know for us we are running only one host, but imagine if you have a bunch of IP address that you could directly provide OpenVAS. It would scan 20 of them concurrently, and with 4 NVTs per host, it would be 20 into 4, which would be 80 NVTs executed at the same time from your OpenVAS server. You might need to adjust these values depending on your bandwidth and how powerful your scanning machine is. So if you have a really nice scanning machine with a lot of bandwidth, you should increase these values. However, if your machine is not powerful enough, or there are bandwidth limitations or limitations on the amount of requests your target could handle, you would want to decrease these values. Finally, it would be added to our assets. It applies overrides, and the minimum QOD, which is quality of detection, it's 70%. What QoD means is essentially the quality of detection that OpenVAS identifies that this target has this specific vulnerability with a 70% confidence. Anything less than that, OpenVAS will not report it to you. In this specific case, however, we could change this configuration and make it go either higher or lower depending on what we want from our scans. Finally, since this is the first scans, there is no other scan yet, and of course we do not want to automatically delete the reports. Great. And as you can see, our scan is almost 90% complete, and you can see we have one report which is being generated already. So while it's running, we could actually check what exactly is in that report. And as you can see, this is the date of my run. This was the task which we clicked to access this. And if I want, I can simply click this to see what all detections have been found. And here you could see that we have 3 medium vulnerabilities with the quality of detection as such and 1 low vulnerability. This also tells us which ports are open, also which hosts were found to have issues, the highest severity, what are the CVEs that it found, and all these meanwhile the scan is still running. So let's wait for the scan to be finished. We will simply go to the information, or if you do not want it to be finished and you want the report right away, you can simply go and download the report. And what I love about this is you get PDF reports for free. Earlier it used to also have HTML reports in the free version, but now they have limited it to PDF. However, there are other formats that you could choose from, and then use something like Pandoc or some other formatting library to then change these reports as per your liking. For now, I'm not going to download this. We'll download this once it's finished. So I'll quickly go back to our tasks. Since this might take a little bit of time, I'm going to pause the video here and then we'll come back once the scans are completed. Alright, and now as we can see, our scan has finished. It's in the status done, generated one report that we already saw, and we could see that the overall severity is medium. The severity showed here is the maximum severity that the task has. So for instance, if this scan would have received 10 vulnerabilities, the highest vulnerability would be shown here. If I want to run it again, I can simply click on this start button. There is also a delete button. There is also an edit task. I can clone it. And finally, I can actually export it. Now let's check the report that we saw earlier, but this time we'll actually download it and see what exactly we can find in that report. So I'll simply click on the date because we know that this is the latest one that has been run. I'm going to click it and then click on download filtered reports. If I click on it, you'll see that there are some filters that are applied here. If you want to change those filters, you can do so by here. So let's say if I want to see only high level vulnerabilities in my result, or let's say if we have here 1, 2, 3, 4 vulnerabilities and I want to see only the medium ones and I don't want to see anything with low, I'm going to click this, and here I'm going to deselect low. And once I do that, I could click on update. And now you can see we only have 3 vulnerabilities, all of them medium. Let me change it because I want low vulnerabilities as well. I don't want false positive, but I also want to see all the logs. So I'm going to click on log check mark. There are also other options that you could use. Like I mentioned, the quality of detection is 70%, but we could change it to 50 or 40. We can also change the solution type. So in OpenVAS, once OpenVAS identifies vulnerabilities, it gives you a list of solutions that you could use in order to fix those vulnerabilities. For instance, we see that there is a weak key exchange algorithm, and there is a solution which says mitigation. It's basically telling us to disable the weak KEX algorithm, and that's the same with all vulnerabilities that OpenVAS detects. It tells you a mitigation for that or a solution for that vulnerability. So if we go back, we could clearly see that here there are a bunch of solution types that we could select. Right now it's set to all, but we could check and identify specific vulnerabilities based on the solution types by using this filter. Same goes for the vulnerability, host IP, location, for example, where exactly the vulnerability was found, a protocol, maybe HTTP, or a port, let's say 443. And we can also choose how many results per page we want to see. Typically, it's 100 results per page, but let's say you get overwhelmed looking at 100 results on a single page, you can change it to 10, and then you have to toggle pages to see the rest of the vulnerabilities. Like I mentioned, I'm going to check log in. And there is an interesting option here that you could store it as a filter. So I will store it and name the filter as with logs, and I'm going to update it. And now you can see, apart from my vulnerabilities, I also see the logs, which even though are not vulnerabilities, but are nice to check out. So for instance, earlier I did not see a service running on port 3306 in my vulnerabilities. But now with the log, I know that there is another port that's open. And now let's say if I want to download this whole report, I can simply click on download. I will choose PDF and press OK. And now I'll simply open it. And you can see this very nice vulnerable report with all the indexes. You could see the summary also and results per host, but since we have only one host that we scanned, there are overviews and you could go ahead and look into it. There's also a table which clearly shows that we have 3 medium, 1 low and 21 logs. And since we have not assigned any false positive, we don't see any false positive here. And we have our report with all the details. Now, if you remember, we actually saved our filter. So let's say now I'm going to unselect the log and click on update. And now I see back only the vulnerabilities. But since we saved our filter, I can actually use it here to view a similar report. This is really helpful when you have a lot of reports and you want to reuse the filter that you created that you want for a specific task. So for instance, if you want to see everything from logs to false positives to high level vulnerabilities to low level vulnerabilities, you can make a specific filter for it, save it, and then use it later. So in our case, we saved it as with logs. So let me quickly open it. So you can see all the filters that you created here in the filters section. So I'm going to click it, open link in new tab. And here you could see this is my filter that I created. If I click on it, I could see that how the filter that we created with our GUI creates the following query. Instead of using a filter, we can directly copy this and paste here. And it should give us the same output, or I can select my filter from this drop down. And here it says with logs. And now as soon as I run it, I can see all my results based on the filter that I created. Now, as I mentioned, I could use this query also to create another filter. And here you can clearly see what exactly is happening. So I'm clicking on apply override 0, level high, medium, low, rows equal to 100. So what I can do is I can actually change it also directly from here instead of going to the UI. So instead of row equal to 100, let me make it row equal to 3. And now if I click on it, you can only see there are 3 rows here. So in order to see the next, I have to click on this next button, and now I see the next 3 vulnerabilities. I can again remove the filter using this option, and now I'm back to seeing all the logs again. What I can also do is if I apply just, let's say, high and or let's just make it, then I can click on update filter, and now you can see I only see low and the logs. Again, I could change it at any point of time, and this is really handy. Let me go back to the removing the filter and then going back to the default filter. So you see how many level of customizations you can have just for your results in OpenVAS, and all of this free and open source. And I have barely scratched the surface because this is just for the results. So if you want to know more about the entire GVM system, you can simply go to help and then user manual. And here you'll find the user manual that would give you ample amount of information for various components. So for instance, I want to know about the results. I could simply go on results, and here I could see all the details of the results, there's even a section of how to interpret it. So if I go to results, let me quickly go up and go to the results page, which is here, and here you can see how you can interpret the report and filter it. So if you quickly go to the filtering, you'll see the same box that we used and with all the details that you could go through. Let me quickly close this, and actually we can close this as well. And now if you go back to our help tab, you could see that there is also a CVSS calculator. Let's click on it, and here you can either choose from CVSS version 2 or CVSS version 3. So the severity that you see here is being generated by that CVSS calculator. Now there are a lot of tabs. I won't go through all of them. They are self-explanatory, but you can of course go through them and find different piece of information that may be helpful for you. For now, we are going to move to a different section. So let me go back to the dashboards, and now on the dashboards you see that we have one task that was finished. We have the severity class in total, which is medium, and all the different parameters. We can of course change it by applying our own custom filters. If we don't have a filter, we can actually create it. We can choose a task, table, chart, whatever we want, and we can even create our own dashboards. Now, due to the limited scope of this video, I won't be covering all aspects of OpenVAS. However, I would show how you can create a new scan by creating a target first and then adding that target to the scan. This would give you a basic idea of how to use OpenVAS. I'll try to cover as much as I can when I go through this specific scenario, but covering each and every aspect of OpenVAS is way out of the scope of this video. So in case you want me to create a video going in depth about a specific part of OpenVAS, please comment down below. If we have enough requests, then I can create a part 3 of this series where I would deep dive into those specific portions. Alright, so now let's quickly create a new scan from scratch without the task wizard. So the first thing that you would want to do is go to configuration and click on targets. You can clearly see that this was the target that was automatically created by the task wizard for us. But now we want to scan a different IP address. So what I'll do is I'll go and create a new target by clicking here, and then I'll name it the new target. I will comment it. This is a brand new target, and then I would manually add the IP address, which is 192.168.1.182. And what I want to do is I want to add two targets. So what I will do is I can simply put a comma and write 192.168.1.183. I can also upload them from a file. So I could have a list of IP address. I could just put them here. If you want to exclude anything, then you can add that here. So let's say instead of using these two, I want to add an entire subnet here, or a list of subnets of, let's say, 1000 IP addresses. I can actually put the subnets here, and let's say if there are a few specific IPs that I do not want the scanner to scan, I'll just put them here. I'll go up, and then we have allow simultaneous scanning via multiple IPs. Of course, I'll say yes to that, although right now our scan is running on a single machine, so we would have only one IP address. Now comes the port list. This is the port list that you could supply to the scanner to scan upon. To give you some insights, OpenVAS internally uses Nmap, and here it has a predefined list of ports that you could assign. If you don't want this port list, you can create your own port list. So for example, here is a manual port list that you could create. What I can do here is I can do T1, and I will name it T1 to, let's say, 655 T5, which means I am adding all available TCP ports here, and I'll name it all TCP ports, and then I will comment here all the TCP ports, and I'm going to save it. So now you see we have a new entry called all TCP ports apart from the ones that we see here. So I'm going to use this new port list that I created. The first three are by default provided by OpenVAS. So even if you do not create your own port list, you can just select from these three. Because I have created a new one, I'm going to just click on this one. Now we have the alive test. So if you know how Nmap works, you know that you could do a TCP ACK. And again, apart from Nmap, OpenVAS also uses some other methods to identify if a host is alive or not. So you can check one of these options in order to do the alive test. So usually it's TCP ACK, but I'm going to do a TCP SYN. You can also do an ICMP and TCP ACK service ping, or you can just do a simple ICMP ping. If you don't know what these are, I would highly recommend you that you Google them and identify them. I haven't created any video on them, but if you want, I would like to create one on Nmap and on the different ways you can do a live test to identify if a host is alive or not. So for now, I'm going to change from TCP ACK to TCP SYN, or I'll just let it be to be TCP ACK service ping. If you have SSH enabled on your system and you want to scan it, you can simply provide the credentials here. Again, in order to provide the credentials and port, you can click on this and add your username and password, or username or SSH key. I'm going to leave it blank for now, and I will not do the reverse lookup only. This is pretty helpful if you want to know all the domain names associated with the IP addresses. But for now, I'm going to just leave it to no. And I will click on save. So now we have a new target with two IP addresses. The port list contains all TCP ports and it's called the new target. If you see the actions section, you'll see that the icons here are similar to what we see in the task section. Let me quickly show you when I go back. If I go back, or let me open a new one and go to tasks. And here you see we had all these options. We just had one more play button here, but the delete, edit, clone and export are the same. This is because similarly like tasks, we could actually delete, edit, clone or export the targets also. You might notice that here the delete button is disabled. This is because We go back to our tasks, we have a task associated with it. In order to maintain consistency, OpenVAS does not allow you to delete a target if there is still a task. This is really helpful, otherwise you will run a task with no target there, and it can create confusion, especially when you have a lot of scans running. So if I delete this right now, my task has gone to the trash can. And if I go back to the targets page, let me quickly refresh it. And now you can see that the delete button is enabled. So now if I want, I could simply delete this. Great. Our target is created. Now I can simply go to tasks. And since there is no task, I'm going to create a new task. So instead of using the wizard, I'm going to use the new task option. I will name it new scan task. I would comment blah blah blah, and then I'll select my target, and you can see we have the new target here. I'll simply select it. There are alerts if you want to put them based on the NVTs. Basically, there are a bunch of options that would allow you to send you emails based on different conditions that you could put here and then view them. So for instance, if the event is that you find a new vulnerability based on a specific NVT, it should inform you. So if I click here, I can do that. Right now, it shows that you can configure OpenVAS to alert you as soon as the running tasks are done. But I'm not going to have an alert, so I'm just going to simply close it. Let me put it up. And moving on, we have the scheduler, which can schedule when exactly we want to run OpenVAS, even when we are not logged in. So you don't need a person to trigger your scans manually. It could be triggered automatically with the help of the schedule. Again, I'll let it be minimum quality of detection to be 70. I will not change these scanners. I would let OpenVAS default. Again, I could change it to only discovery, full and fast, log4 shell, or system discovery. I'll let it be full and fast. I'll just put it random. If there are multiple network source interfaces, I could choose one, or if I want to specify something, I could do that here. And then I'm going to save it. Now I have a new task. I'll simply click on start, and this will go ahead and scan all TCP ports based on the configuration I provided on my vulnerable IP address. Again, I'm going to pause the video now and wait till the scan is complete. And our scan is finished now. Again, you can go and see your last report, all the vulnerabilities, and all the details. This is the basic of how you can create your own scan and run it and get the reports. There are a bunch of other options that I will quickly walk through, but not in detail. So first things first, you have your own settings that you could access from here. You can set up your own alert filters, basically everything that you as a user would create. Then in administration, you can actually create users and groups, roles, permissions, performance, and here is the trash can where we deleted all our targets and tasks. So let me quickly click it, and here you can see all the content that we deleted. So we had one target and one task. So if we click on the task, you can see that there is this task, but we cannot restore it because you have to restore the target first. Similarly, I cannot delete the target until I delete the task first. You can just go back and you could empty the trash. And now, as you can see, we do not have any target or task. All right. Like I mentioned, you can create different users and then you can assign them to groups and then give permissions to the group. Permissions you can decide from here. I don't want to go in detail, so I'll quickly open them and show you how I have a user, which is me, which I am admin and I have access to everything. I can create a new user from here. Similarly, I can create a new group and then assign users to it. It's pretty straightforward. So let's say I assign a group. Right now I only have one user, and I could comment here, and then I could set either the permissions from here, or I could create a new set of permissions from here. So we have these permissions here to authenticate, create alert, create asset, create config, and then you can assign them to a role. We have all these roles, and if you want to know more about the roles, you can simply go here and you can see all the roles. All right, then we can go to our feed status, and you can see we have NVT, we have CVEs, we have the cert advisories, and then we have the GVMD data for compliances. Of course, report formats, if you go here, these were the 5 reports that we saw. You can, of course, import a remote format if it's an XML format just by browsing. I will not go into LDAP and Radius, but it's basically if you want to connect your LDAP or Radius servers to provide authentications and other mechanisms. Let me quickly go to the next one. We already saw targets. We saw the port lists. Of course, you can also add credentials. Let me go through it. So right now we do not have any credentials, but you can assign it here. And we discussed this briefly in the task section when we were seeing how you can create SSH credentials. I'm gonna close it. Again, you have scan configurations that you could set: alerts, schedules, report format, scanners, filters, and tags. Security info. So you have the NVTs, the cert advisories that we just saw. So these are the feed status where we gather all these stuffs, and we have the exact version of feed that we got. So for NVT, we have this specific version, which was updated on 29th June 2022. Since then, there have been no feed update. So if we go here, you can actually see all the feeds that we grabbed. They are actually 99,826 NVTs that we have in our OpenVAS system right now. And you can also see the categories. So local security checks, this is for Fedora, then you have Linux, FreeBSD, and many more. Similarly, if you want to check the CVEs, you can also go here and check all the CVEs, what we are testing against. So as you can see, this is quite new, CVE 2022-34495, and if OpenVAS finds a vulnerability against this CVE, it would report it. Same is the case with all of the security info. So even if you don't want to scan and just want to learn, this is a really good common repository that you could go through and find out more information. Now, these are more related to your internal workflow, depending on how you're using OpenVAS. If you have any remediation tickets created from the vulnerabilities, or you want to create a compliance audit. So this section would, give you all the details about an audit. You can actually manually create it here. And finally, you can also map your business process here. In the next tab, we have our assets. So we could simply go and click here. And this is the host that we found during our scanning. It tells you about the OS that it has CentOS running on it. We can also see this operating system in the operating system tab, and we can also see the TLS certificates that were found. If you notice here, we have a small topology of our hosts, which means there's a direct one-to-one connection from our server to the target. But if there are more servers that you want to scan, you can go ahead and create a host topology for it. If you go on scans, we already have been through tasks, so we can go to reports, and we can see that we have the one new scan task report that we already saw earlier, with 3 mediums and 1 low and 21 log. So instead of navigating to the report through task, you can actually directly see the reports also. It gets a bit messier when you have a lot of tasks and a lot of reports, because for each task you can have multiple scans, and for each scan you will get one report. So one task with multiple reports, and if you have 10 tasks, you have hundreds of reports, and it gets really tedious here because they are not categorized by tasks. You have to filter them out here, For me, it's easier to just go to scan, task, and then check the reports. Next, we have results, and these are all the results that we have found from our scan. Individual results that when you go to a task, then to the report, and then you see that, you can see all of them here. Again, it's task into reports into number of scans. So it becomes considerably larger as we progress. Similarly, checking for vulnerabilities. These are the vulnerabilities that we found. Actually, because we changed the filter, we also see the detection logs here. Again, if you want to make notes for any specific task or target or asset, you can do that here. Simply click here and then it would generate notes for you. And this is what I like this is all the things combined together for free in OpenVAS, which is actually way more than some of the paid tools out there. The funny thing is, when you get a dashboard or a chart, you can actually download directly in SVG format. So you can add it as an element in your HTML reports if you want to make your own. And then finally, we have overrides. Overrides are basically you telling your scanner that the detection that it has found is something different. So for instance, if you find a high-level vulnerability, it would have an NVT OID, and we could change that high to false positive or low, because we know it's not a vulnerability and it's being misdiagnosed by the scanner. And then when you run it again, it will confirm the NVT, and based on the NVT, it would replace the severity of the vulnerability depending on all these configurations. So NVT XYZ for a specific host for a specific location. You can also add a description here. And this is very helpful, especially when it comes to compliance, because you would want to scan your entire network. And if you want to say that, okay, XYZ stuff that is being detected by a vulnerability scanner is a false positive, you can actually add it here and then show the same document to your compliance department. Whenever they want to get a compliance summary, they would know that we did our due diligence, and that's why for this specific reason we have changed the severity. It's easier on your security team and engineering team, as well as well documented for your compliance team. Finally, we have again the dashboards where we started everything, and here you can actually download directly the SVGs for your presentations, or show data and the vulnerability detection mechanisms, or how your security posture has become better. And it's very good, especially when you want to create a high-level executor summary where you do not want to show a lot of details regarding specific vulnerabilities. So this concludes a brief walkthrough of OpenVAS. Now I know I have barely scratched the surface, but it should give you a good idea of how you can incorporate OpenVAS into your security workflow. I would highly recommend you to check the official documentation, and if you have successfully installed OpenVAS, please keep updating the NVTs regularly. And we have finally reached the end of our video. As I mentioned earlier, if you want any specific OpenVAS related topics that you want me to cover, please comment down below. I hope you enjoyed the video and would have learned now how to use OpenVAS effectively. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.